Hello. Welcome to Season 10 of The Horrific Podcast. We're two friends who live in different places but share a love for scary movies. In each episode, we both watch the same movie on our own and then record a conversation together about what we liked, what we hated, if we were scared, and maybe even some larger truths about why people watch horror movies in the first place. This season, our theme is Because We Have the Microphone. And because we have the microphone, you will listen as we discuss a bunch of movies that we just kind of feel like watching with no rhyme or reason. Think of it as a collection of movies that we've referenced a lot in previous seasons or been curious about for a long time. Thanks for joining us, and we hope you enjoy the episode. So were you at all aware of this movie before I put it on the list for this season?
I couldn't remember if I was aware of the movie from watching the trailer after you sent the list out, or if I'd watched it before.
Gotcha.
So yeah, maybe, but I think it was just from the trailer that I watched.
I don't think I've ever talked to another person who has seen this movie.
Yeah.
But it made over $100 million at the box office, so it seems like it was like enough people saw it that someone should be talking about it. But anyway, it's been on my list for a while. It's one that reminded me a lot of Nightcrawler in that it was never really advertised as horror, and I never really have seen many things categorize it as horror. But it does a lot of horror movie things quite well, in my opinion.
That's your opinion. And it sucks, man. Just kidding. I'm just starting.
Well, good.
I'm just starting.
Sounds like we'll get to have some lively debate today, and I'm into it. But yeah, I think I can probably guess what your main complaint with this movie is going to be.
Hugh Jackman can kiss my ass, Daniel. You know I hate that son of a bitch.
For 2.5 hours. But yeah. Anyway, I will, without further ado, introduce this one, and then you can do your fun facts, and then we can slug it out as we get into the hostage beating details.
Deal.
In 2013, Warner Brothers Pictures brought us Prisoners, a dark thriller directed by Denis Villeneuve. Prisoners tells the story of two families whose lives are turned upside down when their young daughters are abducted on Thanksgiving. The effort to find the girls reveals some dark secrets in the community and drives the parents to violent levels of desperation. Prisoners was made on a budget of $48 million and made around $122 million at the box office. It can currently be streamed on Hulu or rented on Amazon Prime Video.
It was a pleasant surprise to find it on Hulu.
Right?
I feel like not enough movies we watch are on Hulu.
Yeah. And I knew it was there because of Real Good, the app that makes your streaming experience real good.
So good.
So what did you learn about this movie?
Did you know that Hugh Jackman signed on to be the star and then dropped out and then signed on again? He should have just
Do you know why?
out. Yeah. Do you want to know why?
Yes.
Well, you'll have to read the facts. Hey, so here's another fact. Did you know that Christian Bale and Mark Wahlberg were supposed to be the main characters in this? And after reading that, I thought, well, Christian Bale and Jake Gyllenhaal would have been great.
Yeah.
Because I actually read facts about this first, and that Hugh Jackman's performance was really good. But Mark Wahlberg, come on, are you kidding me?
Yeah. Yeah, that would have been a little weird.
Yeah. Been like a whole bunch of like, what happened? What happened? That's all he ever does.
Yeah. And had a sniper rifle for some reason.
Mm-hmm. But Bryan Singer was set to direct Prisoners with Christian Bale and Mark Wahlberg starring. When those two dropped out, the reason being to make The Fighter, instead of Leonardo DiCaprio was attached to the project, and Jessica Chastain was rumored to be in talks. Ryan Gosling also auditioned for Detective Loki. In case you didn't know, Ryan Gosling and Jake Gyllenhaal, they have a friendly little thing going on because they both go out for the same parts. In this case, Jake Gyllenhaal won because he had worked with the director before. But then Gosling still went on to work with Denis Villeneuve in Blade Runner 2049. Also, you think 2 hours and 30 minutes is a long time. This was initially 3 hours long. They cut it down. Couple things. One, they realized it was already boring enough as it is. But they had to cut out a whole bunch of stuff because of it was initially rated NC-17. Because that old dude got his butt whooped. And apparently it was even worse than like the first one. Or the first cut. Side note, Oprah Winfrey. They really wanted, Lee Daniels really wanted Oprah to play Holly. This movie is technically inspired by Edgar Allan Poe's The Telltale Heart. Aaron Guskowski based his screenplay for Prisoners off a short story he wrote that was heavily inspired by the themes of guilt building it up in Edgar Allan Poe's The Telltale Heart. The original story, a kid is killed in a hit-and-run accident, and the kid's dad imprisons the driver responsible in a well in his backyard. Obviously, the story was changed significantly before it was found in its final form, but the same themes are still there. Everyone's in a prison. Cat's out of the bag.
Spoiler warning.
Yeah. There was no real reason. I think the movie just kind of stalled out, for the record, why Hugh Jackman dropped and then came back. I think it just stalled out, for the record. There was nothing real fun about that. I just added that as my fact. But those are the facts I have about the movie Prisoners.
Very nice. I feel like there was kind of some intrigue there around the whole casting process.
There was. I feel like they knew it was going to be a popular... I mean, you know, like you were saying, it's weird because this is a popular film that I feel like no one's heard of.
Yeah.
But, you know, when they have films that, like, multiple A-list actors are, like, trying for,
mm-hmm.
then, you know, it has to be a hit.
Yeah. Well, what's crazy is, like, basically the first line of my notes is that I thought the casting was really good on this one. And I've seen it several times. But every time I watch it, I'm like, the guy that they got to play Alex was super creepy and, like, perfect for that role. And you're just like, where did they find a guy that is, like, right for that really creepy role and can pull it off that well? But then the guy that they got to play the actual child abductor, or, like, the one that the next one that you think is kind of the copycat guy, was equally creepy. Like, I feel like everybody in this movie just was kind of perfect for the role that they were written into.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is like, in the cast, so you had Paul Dano playing Alex Jones, who I feel like Paul Dano is like a fantastic actor. I think he's going to be like the Riddler or something in this new Batman that's coming out.
Book him, Dano.
He's going to be something, something in the new Batman. He was in another one that I really liked, which was There Will Be Blood. But, yeah, I thought it was one of those things where, like, the guy who, like you were saying, who played the copycat killer, mm-hmm. Is another one of those characters that plays, like, just really good villains.
Yeah.
Who was also in Batman. The one with Christian Bale. Who was tied to this film.
Jake Gyllenhaal was recently a Spider-Man villain.
Oh my god. And Hugh Jackman's Wolverine. Terrence Howard. He was in the first Iron Man. Viola Davis. She was in Suicide Squad.
Is this a damn Avengers prequel?
Oh my god. I think it is.
All right then.
We solved
I think
it,
we're
dude.
done here.
We solved it.
What have we been talking about?
But I will say, like, Hugh Jackman's, like, portrayal of a father in that situation, and, like, just the way, like, I felt like that was, like, on board. I felt like Jake Gyllenhaal's was great as far as acting. And, you know, I don't talk about, like, how well an actor acts often, mm-hmm. I don't feel like, because I can't act, so I just feel weird doing it. The problem with Jake Gyllenhaal's performance, though, is I love Nightcrawler so much, and it just wasn't that. and that's on
sure.
me. That's not on him.
Well,
that's just on me.
He was not playing as central a figure in this. Like, he wasn't playing like the main guy that's creeping you out. You know what I mean? He was more kind of, his role was just very different in this movie. Mm-hmm. But one thing I did like with him was the way he would just, it was almost like he just kind of rolled his eyes and went into like cop mode.
Yeah.
When he was dealing with the people who were like in like understandably super emotional states. And the way he was just like, I hear what you're saying and we're doing all that we can.
Yeah.
Look, sir, I hear what you're saying, but we're looking into that, you know, and so, and just those were the moments when I feel like his acting really shone through, in that he was very much like convincingly playing a cop who was just playing a cop and going through the motions, you know? And so, anyway, I thought he was a really good ad for the movie, even though it, you know, he could have played probably a more prominent role and been good at that too.
Well, I think it also kind of helps too with the fact that like there's not really like that much of a backstory on him. So like, he's just creating who you're seeing, and you don't need to really necessarily know that. Yeah. To get his character accomplished. Like, you learn that he is a pretty tenacious detective, and you know, all that.
But yeah, I mean, all that said, acting I thought on point. I also really liked the camera work and the film quality. I thought it was just a beautiful movie. And I thought that the sets were really good too, because everything was just like very old and dingy and consistent. You know what I mean? Like, it felt like it was all existing in the same universe, and it all had kind of that like dark, moody, ambient music, and just the whole movie making sort of craft of it I really enjoyed, and I feel like was appropriate, or would be appropriate for a horror movie, even though this one wasn't. You know, I mean, it's pretty hard not to watch any parts of this and not call it horrific. But I realized it was kind of more telling a story than it was just trying to scare you. But it was a pretty dark story.
Yeah, no, it absolutely was. I mean, even the guts of the story of like they were waging war on God or whatever, which is why they were like killing the children. You know, that's like, that in itself could be the theme of any horror movie. Like, hands down, without a doubt. The mental, like, the other thing is seeing how people deal with that kind of trauma. So you have like Terrence Howard and Hugh Jackman, both of their daughters were missing. Yeah. And you have, like, you see how they deal with it. So another way would be how, another horror side of this, I think, is how people deal with the situation. Some, it's a fight or flight kind of thing. And some just have this, like, you know, like the rage that Hugh Jackman had was warranted because his kid was missing, but like he lost all human, I feel like for the majority of people, lost that connection that stops us from being like a serial killer or, you know, just a murderer in general. Like, he just lost that right or wrong thing. And it's like, how far are you willing to go? And he's like, I'm willing to basically almost kill this guy to get my kid back.
But in his own mind, he was so sure that getting the answer out of that guy was the only way he was going to save his daughter. You know what I mean? Like, it was interesting because, like, you knew that he 100% believed he was in the right, and what that empowered him to do, which is kind of like a super trippy exercise if you think that the killers felt equally, or the kidnappers felt equally justified for doing their own behavior. Yeah. Like, if they were crazy enough that they, like, believed that they were fully justified like that. Because it was almost like it made that feeling relatable. You know what I mean? Because he was not cast as a bad guy in the beginning. You know what I mean? He's like a dad who's just doing everything he can to get his kids back. And his character kind of takes you on the journey of, like, as he's going through doing it, you're just like, I mean, based on what I've seen, I'm not entirely convinced he's wrong. You know, like, if at any point Paul Dano's character had just like said like, oh yeah, this is where you can find her, you as an audience member would have 100% felt like he was justified in everything he did, right?
Yeah.
Which is super dark for a movie to do to you.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fine line, because I feel like a lot of people, and myself included, would be like, yeah, I would absolutely do the same thing in that situation. But when it comes down to it, probably wouldn't. I'd probably be one of those people like, let the cops deal with it. That's what they do.
Yeah.
And who knows? They may not have been found alive.
Yeah. Well, and then there was that one scene where Jake is talking to that old woman, and she's was talking about like her kid that got taken, and she says, well, it's just like Barry. No one took them. Nothing happened. They're just gone. And so that's kind of like the other side of it, is just like fully coming to terms and just accepting what happened. And then Hugh's character was like, 100% the opposite direction.
Yeah.
So this movie did a lot, and it had a lot going on. And honestly, probably the first hour and 40 minutes or so of this, I think, is almost perfect for a movie. But it really started to drag on after that.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like it would have been much more effective as like a limited HBO series or something. Like if they did, 4 hour or 4 45-minute episodes or 5 45-minute episodes, and really built out some of this stuff. Because I when you mentioned that originally the movie was over 3 hours, I believe that 100%, because it felt so edited after you got about halfway in. And it's just like they're rushing through some things that would have been really interesting, but it was almost like they were, strapped for time. So you're not getting some storylines developed as much as they could have been. Some characters not being as developed as they could have been. And I think that there is rich enough material here and enough going on in the story that it could easily fill twice the amount of time. And if you broke that up into more like, TV type episodes or something where you could not have to try and absorb it all in one sitting, I feel like that would have been a better experience.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I think that, here's the thing too, when it comes to this, like just every single person, except for the son, I feel like, well, maybe like you get the concept of the film. Everyone's kind of like has their own prison that they're kind of dealing with. And like on the Hugh Jackman side, you see the fight or flight. So you have Hugh, who's fight, and his wife, who's flight, who just wants, gets the medication and goes to sleep and just like checks out.
Yeah. She's just escaping.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, you have, the Loki, who's dealing with his own issues and almost like he's kind of numb to this stuff, and just the obvious one with the actual prisoners in it, with the children, and then you have the priest. You have him, who has he's been literally dead body in his attic. So it's just everyone has their problems that they're dealing with. Some people just murder other people to get the answers, or almost murder them.
Isn't it kind of crazy that the priest ended up actually kind of like being the good guy?
Yeah.
Because he was really set up not to be.
Yeah. No, for sure.
But yeah, no, it was interesting. There were a lot of twists and turns in this one, a lot of misdirection, I guess you could say. And so it made for a really interesting story. But I think too, especially because I talked about the second half feeling really edited, I feel like they just like scene changed over what would have been some really important parts of the story. And then you just are kind of left to like hear them talk about them after the fact. And so it really, for me, lost momentum around the time that Jake discovered the copycat killer's apartment. Like after that is when things became less compelling for me afterwards. But I still really liked the story, and it still really like pulled me back in towards the end.
So was the copycat killer a kid who escaped?
Yeah, that was my understanding.
Okay. Gotcha. That makes more sense. Huh.
So yeah, it was interesting. But there were a couple scenes I wanted to talk about, like when Jake first gets the call and he's going to like investigate the RV that Alex is in, towards the beginning of the movie, it's the dark, it's after dark on Thanksgiving, the RV pulls out, then tries to take off, hits the tree, and then Jake goes inside of it with the flashlight, and it's like dark, and there's like just the dust kind of swirling around in the air, and that really dark, kind of moody, foreboding music. Like, that was such a perfect like horror setup of walking into the place that's confined where you don't know what's going to happen, and all you have, to see is the flashlight, and something could come at you from any direction. Like, just the way that whole scene built up and developed, I thought was really, really good. And then I thought it was kind of a similar thing when he was investigating the priest's house, and when he, ended up finding that hidden door behind the refrigerator and going down and then finds the corpse and everything. But this movie really could kind of fall into some of those really compelling horror sequences. And, all the way from kind of the more subtle ones, like I just mentioned, to the torture scenes where Hugh and sometimes the other guy are torturing Alex to try and like find out where the girls are. That was brutal, and it pulled no punches, and the special effects were very disturbing. And yeah, I mean, I feel like all of the elements that make a good horror movie, you could point to good examples of in this movie.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. As long as we're not calling it a horror film, because if we called this one, then we would have to call like Knives Out a horror film, or like, just some of the other mystery thrillers out there, Lovely Bone, like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I could definitely see that for sure.
But there were also no like child serial killers in Knives Out. You know what I mean? Like, this one I think kind of took things to a different level. Well,
but Lovely Bones is a prime example, the one with Mark Wahlberg, because isn't that the case? Like, his daughter was killed by a guy who, it's the same concept. And it's like, that's not. I guess Knives Out may have been a bad example because that was more of a mystery.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, I just don't want, one of my big pet peeves is like for us to be fooled, so we pick a movie that they say this is a horror, and it's like, oh no, that's a mystery thriller. I don't know how many times I've said that over the years, but I don't know who would listen to this that would also like be making those movies.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. You say it's almost like, for me, it's almost like you have Lovely Bones, which is like the Batman of 1960s, and then you have this one, which is like maybe Christian Bale's, which is darker. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, like, it's like a darker version of those, which is what I like. Like, at the end of the day, I actually really like the movie.
I have not seen Lovely Bones, so I don't have that frame of reference.
I actually only see bits and pieces when I worked at the theater, but it was basically the same concept, according to Katie, too.
Gotcha.
But still, I mean, it's, this was darker.
This one also definitely didn't have a horror ending, right? I mean, they got the kids back. The son survived. Alex survived. So, like, yeah.
This is also like this is a situation of what other dads in situations like Lovely Bone type movies would want to actually do.
Yeah,
Hugh Jackman did it. Like, you have these guys that are so pissed off at, this kidnap, all this stuff, and they don't. They try to take it in their own hands, but Hugh Jackman not only took it in his own hands, like, he was just like, I'm about to get answers. I'm not stopping until I do.
Yeah, I actually kind of, for the ending, at my notes I had, like, just to ask you what your perspective on this was as a dad, because that's like one perspective I can't come at it from, and I think that sums it up really well, is that he was sort of like personifying that protective urge that most dads would feel, I would think. And so I think there's probably some like satisfaction in just seeing him go for it. But then, and I also, in my memory from when I had seen this before and like not been taking notes, I had totally forgotten about the part where, what was it? The character Alex says just to him, like, they didn't start crying until I took them or whatever it was that he said.
Yeah.
But after that part, I was just like, oh, yeah, that's way more understandable that he got as extreme as he did, because the guy straight up told him
Hugh Jackman,
something that made him think that. It wasn't just that he really wanted to believe it
right,
and was driven there by his own, like, I just need an answer. He did have, like, pretty solid...
Well, he also saw what he did to
evidence.
Yeah, he saw what he did to the dog, too. Like, Paul Dano's character looked left,
looked right,
I
had no sympathy for him the rest of the movie after that.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying, like, Hugh saw all these things, and he heard, like, he had that said to him, and so, like, he knew deep down that Paul Dano's character was, like, phony. Like, that he was full of it, basically. And also, like, the cops were saying, like, they asked his mom, or his aunt, like, did you hear, I don't know whose mom would, like, not cover, you know, if you're in that situation. I mean, I'm sure there's some, but still, you know, mom or aunt. But I would say this, like, you know, coming from the parent side, I don't think it's that much different than, like, you know, if something happened, say, to you, I would be in Austin, like, now. I would be on my, you know, like, it's the same feeling that you have for those family that you love, and so you can absolutely relate. I mean, at least I think it's just how the person would be. Like, I would be down there to see, but I would be running in circles, just panicked, you know, but it would be a similar situation. I think the only difference is if you were kidnapped, say, and I knew that they kidnapped you, and I did what I did to that guy, and I got caught by the cops, I would be screwed. Like, I would 100%, you know. But if something happened to either one, or, you know, to my kid, and I did that, I would probably still go to jail, but I'd have a lot of respect when I went to jail. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like it would almost even be like a crime of passion. But if something happened to you, they'd be like, well, you know, you should be able to think yourself, you know, whatever kind of BS that you get. That's the only real difference is from the legal standpoint. I feel like I could probably get away with it more, and people would be like, oh, he's not that crazy. They took their kid. I would do that too. But I would absolutely feel like I would want to do that for you and, you know, the short list of people I have.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
You know who I'd start torturing first?
Russell.
Without a doubt.
I do not condone that behavior.
Without a doubt, he's first in line.
You've just been waiting for an excuse.
I've been waiting. So, like, if you don't respond to me within, say, 30 minutes, I'm packing to go to fight him.
So, like, Russell should get me a like the battery pack extension for my phone.
Yes, you're gonna start getting all these like these
like 3 a.m.
Yeah. Hey man, have you checked in with Brett?
Hey, you okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
I was actually thinking the other day that if anybody ever was mean to my dog, I would just fight them like with no concerns. Because I would probably get arrested, but if I went to court, I would just show my phone reel.
Yeah.
Of my dog being ridiculous. I'm like, he kicked my dog.
Right.
And I fought him, and everyone would be like, hey, how'd it come? And you're free. Go home. So
yeah. You could be like, here's my friend's phone. He has pictures of him too. Like,
exactly.
Hirsch is part of the fam.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyway, yeah, I am glad that we did this movie.
I'm very glad
I enjoyed it. It was too long, but
that's just my impatience.
Oh no, I had the same feeling. Like, if you look at my notes, it's like super dense for like the first hour and a half, and then it's like 4 lines, and then a bunch about the ending. Yeah,
like you can only do so much of those surprises, but still, I mean, I think if you haven't watched this, you absolutely should watch it. Like, this is this was incredible acting, incredible setting. They, you know, a lot of this was filmed in natural light, for the record, and it was just, you know, it was a win. There's a reason why it got as much as it did at the box office, and I feel like it honestly should have got more and should have more recognition. Yes,
and I would encourage horror movie filmmakers to watch this movie for how to do some things right.
Yeah.
Because this one really, really nailed some like kind of classic horror setups in a way that a lot of other movies often fall short.
Couldn't agree more.
Well, in that case, I think we're done here. And that's it for today's episode. If you've listened this far, then thank you, and we hope you've enjoyed it. We're always looking for new ideas, so if you have any questions, comments, or movie suggestions, please send us an email at thehorrificpod@gmail.com. Or feel free to comment on or message our Facebook page. Just search for The Horrific Podcast. Thanks for listening.